notice that a lot in public when I'm in public places, restaurants, stores, movie theaters, the worst
Oh
place
God,
to be loud. Just people's lack of awareness of people around them and where they are and how they should just act accordingly when they're around strangers.
Yeah,
Shocking, baffles my mind.
yeah. Look, if you're a kid or something, kids
Right,
act
right.
like kids, but it's adults that just seem to just not have any sense in their minds, and they just act like fools all the time. I just don't get it. But all right, well, let's get into the podcast. So
Yes.
yeah, so if this is your first time catching us here, I'm Stephen Billings. This is the Cinema Discovery Project, and with me, as always, is Mr. Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, we're coming at you this week with kind of a special, almost inspired episode, inspired by what is happening here. When that, every February is a celebration of Black History Month here in the United States. Granted, you should probably celebrate,
There's
Black
great
history
Black
all the
history
time.
all over the world, of
Yeah, I
course.
mean,
Yes.
you should always, Black history is history. It's one of the same. But anywho, they like to single out February and honor Black history and things like that here in the United States. So Stephen and I decided that, you know what? Let's discuss some of our favorite films that were directed by African Americans or just Black directors
Yeah.
in general, because we want to mention that although Black History Month is something that we celebrate here in the United States, uh, it's not only African American cinema that contains themes and cultural things for before the Black community, but it's kind of a global thing as well. It's
Sure.
not just here. And we also want to mention that while we're probably going to be discussing more contemporary movies, probably movies within the last 30, 40 years, but Black cinema goes back all the way to the silent era. Once again, we get back down to the bedrock of cinema history with the silent movies. And of course, it progressed on from there. And just, we're not going to go into it in too much depth. I think that's something we want to save for when we do a lot more proper research, really dive into the history of Black cinema. So, but I do want to touch on a few things where, of course, there's a lot of cultural and political context that you need to know when it comes to Black cinema, because it's very much impacted it. The idea of segregation definitely impacted Black cinema. Segregation was all the way up into the 1950s, 60s era.
Yeah.
So before then, you know, African American people couldn't go to regular theaters. They had to go to their own special theaters. And of course, there were probably films catered to those audiences, as well as in the other, non-segregated, not non-segregated, but, white theaters, if you will.
Sure.
So, of course, there's a lot of things like that. Of course, when it comes to the way African Americans have been portrayed in Hollywood cinema, it's very controversial, especially early on. You have, them being portrayed as caricatures and stereotypes being implemented. A lot of times you get people who are white portraying black people using blackface, which apparently is something people still do now, because all you see in the news is people like, 20, 30, 10, whatever years ago, pictures are unearthed of them, in Halloween costumes in blackface. And I'm like, what are you people doing? What? It's never been okay.
It's never been okay.
Let alone now, then, or ever. What are you doing? It's boggles
Once again,
the mind.
them adults. There's adults that are just fools out there. It's just
and it's adults doing it. It's not like, kids. Even kids. Why would adults let kids get away with stuff like that? But anywho, so
but also the other thing is and it's unfortunately it's how it is that unfortunately we do have a lot of directors to talk about here, but there really isn't enough to talk about.
Unfortunately, just doing very brief research on this subject is you find a lot of the quote unquote best or well known Black directors are from the last 35, 40 years, and there's only quite a handful of them that have really emerged as being
been
very
able
well
to
known.
Break into the mainstream of sorts.
Yeah, very
basically.
much being break into the mainstream. And what is interesting is that I think right now we're going through a bit of a renaissance with this awareness of Black directors and the films that they are making, and the quality of the films they are making, I think, are fantastic. When it comes to kind of films in the past, you have, certain movements with like within any other film genre. You had black exploitation films in the 70s. In the kind of late 80s and and 90s, you have, more urban type films, which we're
Yeah.
probably going to definitely get into very, very soon. Because very much, I find that's unique about black cinema is that it's very much a reflection of its culture and the times that the films are made in. You know what I
Well,
mean?
definitely. I mean, that's you could say that basically for any
Right. True.
ethnicity. Most of the time it's about their experience. It's certain races or certain ethnicities experience in their culture. I mean, it's whether it's Asian culture where of course a lot of their back in the day a lot of their stuff was about samurais and their that discipline and that kind of thing. That they are culture that is very into the martial arts, and a
Right.
lot of their films are martial art movies, and
No,
and
no, no.
and and of
Yeah, I
course they're
was.
really into
Yeah,
discipline and family. So a lot of their movies are
yeah, I was
about
going to mention
family
that.
and yeah,
When
so
I think of kind of reflecting of society, I think a lot of the post World War II Japanese
yeah,
cinema was very much reflecting on the changing of its culture and the changing of society. I think a lot of about that with Ozu and Kurosawa and people like that really um, using those themes and really showing that culture. But getting back to black cinema, um, right off the bat, I kind of want to dive into one of my favorite films, of all time. I was telling Steven this right before the podcast, and that's Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. I
definitely,
want to
yeah.
start off, literally at the tippy top, at least for
Yeah, it's
me.
what Spike Lee. Spike Lee's always been a controversial filmmaker. I mean,
Of
obviously
course.
that's part of who he is, but I can't deny that some of his films are very, very good, and Do the Right Thing is probably the best. It's maybe his crowning achievement still.
I think it
Um,
is.
yeah,
And what is interesting with Spike Lee is that he's kind of part of that independent American cinema that kind of cropped up in the late 80s and definitely in the 90s, where you get people, like I mentioned before, Robert Rodriguez, Tarantino, Kevin Smith, Steven Soderbergh, others, et cetera, et cetera. He was definitely much part of that generation. And what I find interesting about Spike Lee is his films are so unique, especially his 80s work, which I've just kind of recently delved into. Things like She's Gotta Have It and stuff like that are just so unique and so avant-garde documentary
he's
style,
got a
just
very he's got
so
a very
filmed so
interesting
well.
directing style in his movies, especially his earlier films, because he used a lot of like oblique angles, a lot of them sideways angles that were very almost like a what Kenneth Branagh does, you know.
Yeah, he used a lot of unique angles just to keep people kind of interested and off guard and
Yeah,
just engaged with his films. And just the editing style in general was just so interesting. I remember like She's Gotta Have It's also almost like an interview documentary type style as well, where they'll just
yeah.
kind of cut to people just talking about stuff. And that happens in Do the Right Thing as well. It happens a lot. Like, you'll see a character Radio Raheem will, be walking down the street and all of a sudden, you'll get a monologue of him that's, a reference to Night of the Hunter, where he's got those uh kind of the rings on his
He's got
hand.
like the brass knuckle rings,
Yeah, the brass knuckle rings, and it's like, and he's going into that whole, that the whole thing from Night of the
love and
Hunter,
hate.
love and hate,
Yeah,
and like how they're constantly battling within us. Love and hate is kind
yeah.
of the two strongest emotions in the world, and they really are. And what I find so amazing about Do the Right Thing is how contemporary it is, or how more contemporary it just keeps getting, because the themes in the movie don't go away. They're
Oh no,
still
I
there
mean
today.
that particular scene you're talking about literally is kind of it is the theme of the movie. I mean, he's literally describing what ends up happening in the movie, where you know even though love and hate can coexist together, every once in a while it's going to battle, and by the end of the movie, there's a fight. The thing that ends up with hate clashing and differences of opinion and clashing and just turning into a tragic event, of
Yeah,
course.
basically, if you're not familiar with the film, it takes place on like a really, really hot summer day in an urban setting. I believe in Brooklyn. Not a big stretch for Spike Lee. He seems to set a lot of his early films in that kind of Brooklyn, New York setting. I believe that's where he's from. So he
Yeah.
said it there, and what you get is just this powder keg that just keeps building throughout this movie as it's everyone's sweating, it's so hot, and what you get is a cross section of all the different type of characters, literally characters that you see in this urban setting. You got the three guys sitting outside, three older gentlemen
They're
sitting
my favorite.
outside
They're like my favorite of the
who are
movie.
just talking about whatever. They have no
Nonsense.
filter
Yeah.
whatsoever. You've got the mayor who just wants to get his Miller High Life from the convenience store that's run by Asian people. Run by it's an Asian market, and then the other people will be commenting on they come here and they set up shop and then they charge us and all that kind of stuff. It's very much a political commentary on race relations and stuff like that. And then you also have this pizzeria that's run by Danny Aiello, and I think his sons work for him, and one of them is John Turturro.
Yeah.
And one of the major conflicts in the movie is the fact that on his wall, he's got pictures of all of these like famous Italian people, but he's got
Yeah.
no pictures of any famous, black people. And it's a point of contention in the film. Spike Lee stars in the film as well as Mookie, and he's the delivery boy for this pizzeria. And he's got his own thing going on with Rosie Perez, who's kind of like his girlfriend and stuff like that.
Kind of. Yeah.
And
Well, they have a son together, so at least
they do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they have a somewhat
Definitely a
romantic
relationship of some kind.
of some kind.
Yeah, but it's I think that's what makes I mean, a lot of times in Spike Lee's movies, I feel I mean, obviously, a lot of his stuff comes with a sense of anger behind it. I feel like, but this movie, I think
social commentary, heavy.
Yeah, like
social
I feel like he
commentary,
always a lot of times takes like one point of view, one side a lot of times, but in this one I felt it was a little bit more open because I think that you see where certain characters, like you were saying, the situation where there's all these Italian people on the wall, and the one character's like, why ain't there any black people up on the wall? Why ain't there any brothers up here? And so the one guy wants to like basically get this place shut down. He wants to get everybody to get the pizza place shut down because he's basically saying that this guy's being racist. And even though black people come in and keep his business running, he won't put any black people on the wall. But, then the Spike Lee characters, it's like, who cares? Like, it's like about accepting other people's beliefs or other people's,
right.
How they like to live their life. If they, it's his shop. He's an Italian man. He has Italian people on his wall. Leave it alone. It's his place. Why can't he be the way he wants to be? But on the other hand of that, the other guy's got a point where he's like, dude, we keep your place afloat. Why can't we have any African-American things in here when there's always African-American people in your store? Like, it's like, can there not be like an equality, like somewhere a middle ground there? But it's like, so it's interesting that, there's a lot of situations like that. Like also with the three gentlemen sitting on the corner, the one guy gets really upset about the Asians and owning that market, and he's like, well, you're from another country too. You came here too. And, what have you done? Like, what are you going to do? Like they came here and did something successful. Stop complaining that somebody did something you couldn't do. So it's like, there's always these like, people's anger coming from the wrong places sometimes. And, just people being ignorant or people being, and not really thinking about where their hate comes from. So I think I think the movie hits a good middle ground.
Right. And yeah, it's very open, like you say about giving all the sides, and it feels very natural.
Yeah.
Because that's, people, in a neighborhood like that you're going to get a cross section of, different ideas and different.
Well, there's also, like you said, the mayor character.
Played
where
by Ossie Davis.
Yes. And he's considered the bum of the neighborhood,
Right.
But really you don't know about it. He has a scene where these kids are, pestering him and saying that he's a nobody and he's nothing, but they don't know that the fact that he basically lost his family, because he went poor, because he didn't have a job. He tried to get a job. He couldn't, he lost his family. And then now he's, just a broken man. I mean,
right.
If you haven't been through that, you don't know. When you don't know what somebody's gone through, you can't judge them. And and the thing is that was black people judging other black people. So that shows you even another level of perspective.
Yeah, it does play on that whole idea of, fighting with, that for a group of people that are so marginalized, oppressed or subjugated or whatever, they shouldn't be fighting amongst themselves. They should
Yeah,
be unified. There's unity, there's strength in unity and stuff like that. I think
yeah.
that's what Spike Lee was commenting on when he in that scene. This film is filled with people you probably are aware of now. The late great, like I said, Ossie Davis, Ruby Dee's in the film, Spike Lee's in the film, John
Martin
Turturro.
Lawrence is in the film.
Giancarlo Esposito is in the film, and he's playing a character called Bugging Out, and
Yeah,
he's the one who you were mentioning was kind of freaking out about not having uh, brothers on the wall or whatever,
yeah, yeah,
and and there's a quote at the end of the movie, and I can't remember the quote. It's from Malcolm X, and people have kind of ruminated about what it means or whatever, because there's this duality of this contrasting in philosophies between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and it's kind of like like we were talking about, that love hate type of thing,
yeah,
where Martin Luther King is kind of seen as the love side, and then Malcolm X being the more extreme when it came to the civil rights movement would be seen as the hate side. And very interesting is that Spike Lee would go on to make a Malcolm X movie,
yeah.
one of his follow-ups to um, do the right thing, and that's kind of I think one of my favorite films as well from him. Malcolm X, I think, is just a very powerful biopic, one of the better biopics I think we've seen.
Well, that's
Usually,
a good. I mean, we
yeah,
could
go
go
on.
on about Spike Lee all day,
Yeah, I know we can. I just wanted to
but but
transition into
but there is a good transition there. Talking about that, we could go to a female director, Ava
do it.
DuVernay, who did
Okay,
a Martin Luther King
yeah,
biopic,
that's very
Selma.
true.
So
Yes, she did, and which Malcolm X was in. Well, the character that someone portrayed Malcolm X in the film.
yeah,
Coincidentally, yeah, Ava DuVernay is fantastic director. She's I can't wait to see what her other projects that she's working on. She's not only did Selma, which I think is an astonishing film. That's a powerful movie. My goodness, it's an emotionally powerful movie, and just fantastically well acted, well directed. Um, Man, came out 2014. If you haven't seen this movie yet, watch this movie, because it is something to see. This was the first time I was made aware of the talented David Oyelowo, who
yeah,
portrayed Dr. Martin Luther King, and he is amazing in the movie as well.
yeah. He was I famously gypped that year, I think,
Oh
from
yeah,
Academy Award nomination.
yes,
Um,
yes. I think the film itself was
Well, I
shortchanged.
like the movie. I didn't love the movie. I think I honestly, I mean, if I'm being honest, and maybe I need to watch it again, but I found the direction to be a little bit stale in that movie.
Ooh,
And I know I'm shooting guns off now, but it doesn't mean that
hot
I don't
take.
think she's talented. I definitely think she's talented. I need to see. She has it. Didn't she have a famous documentary she did before this? I'm sorry,
It was following this. It was her
or
follow
it's
up.
called 13, right?
Yeah, 13, yes, or 13th. Let me look. I'm looking right now.
But I know she recently did Wrinkle in Time, which was her first kind of big
Yeah,
delving into to a big budget movie.
yeah. 13th came out in 2016, which was after this. That dealt with um talk about racial racism in society. It's an in-depth look at the prison system in the United States, and
Yeah,
how it reveals the nation's history of racial inequality. It's really
basically
a film
the
about racial
idea is that
inequality.
it's basically the newest form of slavery for African Americans
Yeah,
is the
but
jail system.
the documentary is so much more in depth than that.
Oh, of
It's
course, yeah,
all about stereotypes, perception,
yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. It's very in depth. It's available on Netflix. I think it was produced by Netflix or distributed by them. And yeah, it's really really good. But like you said, she did go after that to do more mainstream in A Wrinkle in Time, which not a lot of people liked, and it didn't do very well at the box office. Unfortunately, I didn't think it was particularly
It's
bad.
not terrible, but it definitely. I don't know who's to blame because I don't know
Right,
if because this was a big budget movie. I think it was a Disney movie.
it was.
Yeah, so who's to know if maybe Disney didn't, cut this movie up and mess up the ultimate vision
I
that
have
Ava
no idea.
DuVernay had.
I
So
don't know. I don't know. All I know is this: is some people really do like it, and you can if you so choose. I think film has a lot of positive things about it and some negative things
It's
about it.
definitely directed well.
Yeah,
It's
I did a whole review about it on my channel, and I know Steven's talked about it and stuff. But she's working on, um, I believe, a Central Park 5 miniseries now. And Central Park 5 is that famous. There's actually already been a Ken Burns documentary on it, where those kids who were accused of a crime that they didn't commit and they were put in prison and all that kind of stuff. Definitely do research on that. But she's also working on the New Gods, the the DC movie or the DCEU movie, from the famous comic book by Jack Kirby. Yes. And so I'm curious to see one, if that movie gets made, because you never know with Warner
yeah,
Brothers and DC. They just announce stuff and then they just
yeah, and
kind of
then it
goes
could just
away.
go away. Yeah,
Goes away. But yeah, Ava DuVernay I think is fantastic. If you ever see her, in interviews and her discuss movies and all that kind of stuff, she's really, really fantastic. I would definitely also check out her movie in the Middle of Nowhere, which she did in 2012, which I've seen as well. It's really, really good. But getting back to kind of that that more, I like to group these films kind of together a little bit. And that's kind of more what I was talking about before, this kind of urban landscape type films. These three films I think are rather interconnected with one another. And one I actually haven't seen, but I want to mention it just because many, many people have seen it. But so first up here is John Singleton's Boys in the Hood, which is
love it.
very, very popular.
Great. Is actually, if you've seen Straight Outta Compton, you know that Ice Cube was part of the writing of that film.
Yes, he's also in
So
the movie.
he's
He
in the movie,
plays
of course.
character of Doughboy.
Yeah.
And then the other one that kind of is a companion to that one as well is the Hughes Brothers Menace to Society.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to, and then the
Haven't
third,
seen it. Haven't seen it.
you haven't seen Menace to Society, okay?
No, no.
And then the third one being Juice,
Yeah,
which
I've seen
famously
Juice.
starred Tupac. Oh, so you've
Yes,
seen Juice is
I've
the
seen.
one I haven't seen. So
Yeah, yeah.
Steven, and so it's very weird how this puzzle came together. Like I've
It's
seen,
been a while though. It's been a
yeah, I've
while,
seen the
but
first
yeah.
two, and Steven hasn't seen the middle one that I've seen. But specifically, Boys in the Hood is one that people keep going back to over and over again. Famously directed by John Singleton, it was his first film, I believe, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can argue it is his best.
It's probably his best.
And yeah, and the film stars, once again, names you will be well aware of: Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr. is in it, Morris Chestnut, Lawrence Fishburne is in it, and the film is, follows the lives of three young, boys who live in the Crenshaw ghetto of Los Angeles. This is the ghetto. This is,
Yeah.
poor neighborhood. This is the neighborhood where, you famously just, drug busts and helicopters fighting with police. There's so much, going on in that area. And this film is all about them having to deal with racism, their personal relationships, the violence, and where are their lives going, and ultimately, can you escape your surroundings? I think is
Yeah.
a big theme in both Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society. Will the world you live in swallow you whole, or will you end up escaping? To use a metaphor. And the film is really powerful, especially the final sequences of the film are really powerful. I don't want to give away anything. Needless to say, it's a very powerful and I think personal movie for John Singleton. Um, Steven, you have anything to say about Boys in the Hood?
I mean, it's another one it's been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember, I think that the main things I remembered from the movie were the performances being so strong, especially Lawrence Fishburne. I think, what does he play? He plays one of their fathers, right?
Yes. Yeah, he
Yeah.
does. And he
Yeah.
has very wise words. It's like, I was actually just looking at the scene the other night where he's like, if you look in, black neighborhoods, why there's liquor stores in black neighborhoods, there's gun shops in black neighborhoods. Why do you think that? It's
Yeah.
all like kind of,
It's
stereotypical type stuff. It's there
basically,
to keep them down.
yeah, I
You
was
know what I
gonna
mean?
say it's they're putting stuff in front of people to make people be tempted to keep their lives down instead of bettering themselves.
Right.
They're being put in situations where they can't better themselves. Not only are these people kept down, just in general, but they're just given the ammunition literally to, to destroy their lives themselves.
Yeah,
They did,
and
and their fathers just has to remind them to be strong enough to not be tempted to
right.
do the wrong thing. Yeah,
Do
got to
the
do
right
the
thing,
right
right.
thing.
What is interesting is, we forgot to mention probably the most famous actor who at the time was kind of a nobody. Samuel L. Jackson is in Do the
Is
Right
in
Thing.
yeah, he plays a DJ. Yeah,
Yeah, he's kind of narrating the whole film kind of in the background. He's in this DJ booth that's like in the neighborhood, and
yeah,
he's just narrating. Spike Lee likes to use that kind of framing a lot in his movies, where
yeah.
he'll have like a narrator and stuff like that. And oftentimes it's Samuel L. Jackson.
What's funny is later on, I think it's in Inglorious Bastards. He kind of does a similar thing in a scene where
He
he's
does.
doing a voiceover kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, back to John Singleton. I mean, another movie I really liked of his is Four Brothers, um, which I think is another kind of it hits on another idea of kind of unconventional family thing and how you know unconventional because of course they're all an adopted family, but also that they're black and white. There's two, I think two of them in the family are the oldest and the youngest are white, and then the two middle brothers are black.
Right.
And they were adopted by this older white lady, and she gets killed. They live in kind of a ghetto. I think it might be Chicago.
I think it's Detroit.
Is it Detroit? Yeah.
Yeah, because I
And
think at one time they're playing like a hockey game and they're wearing like Detroit Red Wings
okay.
jersey. Yeah.
But their adopted mother gets killed, and they basically come back to the neighborhood to find out who did it. And it's really I really enjoy that movie. I think
Yeah,
it's
it's an
underrated.
I think it's an underrated movie. Is it? Do I think it's amazing? No, but I think it's underrated.
Yeah, Chiwetel
We talked about
Ejiofor
the
plays the
cast.
bad guy too.
Yeah, Chiwetel Ejiofor plays a gangster in that film. The film stars Mark Wahlberg, Tyrese is in it, Andre Benjamin or Andre 3000, whoever,
Yeah,
however you want to refer to him, and their youngest brother is played by Garrett Hedlund.
I
I
think
want
so.
to
Yeah,
is
I'm
the
pretty
youngest
sure. Yeah,
brother. Yeah, I don't know what he's up to these days, but yeah, he's in that movie.
he
I
did the
think it's
Peter Pan
underrated.
movie recently.
We don't speak of that.
You don't. Sorry,
Uh,
but yeah,
'Cause
I think it's an underrated one. I mean, he's got other movies. I think
he
he,
does, but
he
they're not great.
no,
Remember
no, they're not always great. No,
he did well, I'll say this, he did do the Shaft movie from
he did.
2000
He did.
starring Samuel L. Jackson, which they're coming out with the new Shaft movie this year.
Yeah,
Continuing on that story, where it's both Richard Roundtree, who was the original Shaft, as well as Samuel L. Jackson, who is the son of the original Shaft. And then in the third one, you get the grandson of the original
yeah,
Shaft.
yeah. Another Shaft.
It's the trailer
Shaft
for
the
that.
third.
Yeah, the trailer for that just came out. So if you're interested, go check it out. The tagline for that movie, I think, is hilarious.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
another one. I'll go ahead
go
and
on.
bring up the next one. One I really love. He's very multifaceted. He's done a lot of different types of movies, and that's F. Gary Gray.
Okay.
Um, and the one that, of course, the main
Oh,
one
say
for
it.
me is Friday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Friday is awesome. Which is a comedy set in like once again kind of an urban neighborhood. Where you got maybe more suburbia neighborhood. I don't know that it's necessarily near the city, but basically you got Ice Cube. Once again, he's playing this guy who kind of just lost his job and he has nothing to do on a Friday. So his friend Smokey, played by Chris Tucker, is going to get him high. I'm going to get you high.
Yeah, Chris
And it's just
Tucker,
kind of a
man.
movie about nothing. It's just about getting through it. It's once again kind of a Spike Lee thing where it's one day in the life
Right.
of these people.
Kind of like real time.
Yeah.
What is interesting about Fridays is it is a character story. There is the character arc in it,
Oh, yeah.
where Craig, who is Ice Cube, he's got to at one point he's got to like overcome an obstacle in the film. That obstacle being Tiny Lister, whose character's name is Debo, and he's kind of like the bully, the bully in the neighborhood, stuff like that. And he's got to fight him at the end of the movie, and he's got to kind of overcome his own insecurities about stuff like that.
It's kind of a coming of age of sorts, even though he looks
Yeah.
like he's 30 years old already, and he's supposed to be like.
I think Ice Cube may have already been 30. I don't know. Came out in 1995.
He doesn't look the age I think he's portraying, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I think he's supposed to be playing somebody that's like maybe like 20. like somebody that's just out of high school, kind of, but is like
Right.
and is still living at home, and his
Oh.
dad's always getting on him
Oh,
about
yeah.
like getting a job, job, get a job.
Yeah, his
You know?
dad is portrayed by the hilarious comedic actor John Witherspoon,
Oh, he's awesome.
who became aware of in the 90s when I was watching the Wayans Brothers television show, and he was the
Yeah.
father on there. And yeah, he's hilarious. Regina King's also in the
Uh huh.
movie. Nia Long is in the movie. Chris Tucker, Faison Love. A lot of these actors you see pop up a lot later on, but this is a really early film from Chris Tucker,
Yeah.
and Chris Tucker kind of blew up in the late 90s, mid
Yeah.
to
He
late
ended up
90s.
going on to do Rush Hour
Yeah,
movies, and
Rush Hour came out in 1998, a few years later, and you get Rush Hour 2, then Rush Hour 3.
he really did. He didn't
Less they
do
said about
much,
that.
honestly.
He was in Jackie Brown. He was yeah, but he made a name for himself just doing the
Everything he
Rush
did,
Hour
well,
movies.
everything he
You know?
did, he got. It was it got publicity. Like everything he
Yeah,
did, at least people saw the movie. But he honestly didn't do a lot. Like he did. I mean, in
yeah,
the sense of like
he made
literal amount of movies he's
well,
done.
he played that, the one, Chris Tucker character, kind of the wacky, crazy,
I guess
funny
he was in Fifth
guy.
Element too. He was in Fifth
He
Element.
was in Fifth Element. Oh
Yeah,
man,
so annoying in that
man.
movie.
Yeah, he was like the lounge singer.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, F. Gary Gray's went on to do a lot of different types of movies. He did The Negotiator,
yeah,
which has
underrated movie. Underrated.
where Sam Jackson plays this, or he's actually in the building in this movie. You got Kevin Spacey who plays this negotiator that tries to talk down the Sam Jackson character in the building. It's a pretty good thriller. He did one of the recent Fast and the Furious movies.
Yeah, he did the Fate of the Furious.
Oh, great! Yeah, is that the one with the long airport? I think it is.
No. This is the one where they're like driving on ice at the end of the movie, and there's a giant
Oh,
tank.
the recent one. That
And
was
yeah, and The Rock like redirects
a missile.
a torpedo with like his hands or whatever on ice. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. It's so
it's
dumb.
terrible. I'm sorry, I couldn't get on board with that one.
Yeah, but he also directed the remake of The Italian Job, which I think is
Yeah,
underrated.
it's not bad.
He is directing the new Men in Black film, which comes out
Ooh, I'm in for
sometime
that. I'm in
later
for
this
that.
year,
Yeah.
Men in Black International. But getting back to kind of where I was wanting to go before with um, Menace to Society and its relationship with um, Boys in the Hood, I always view them as almost a yin yang
Okay.
type of film, just because Menace to Society for me feels more gritty, feels darker, like literally darker.
Hmm.
And it feels more realistic to the point, realistic in the sense like it's more pessimistic. Like
Yeah.
no matter what you do, the world will swallow you
Yeah.
up.
It's a
You can't.
cynical view.
It's a
Cynical
very
view of the
cynical
world.
view. Whereas in Boys in the Hood, there's a more optimistic view, especially if you compare the two endings to both of the films. Granted, they're both very emotional and and they're very tragic, but Menace to Society, I think, is even more tragic. And Menace to Society, I think, really doesn't sugarcoat things. Like it really says like you are responsible for your bad actions dictate what's going to happen to you. You know, all that kind of stuff. Like if you basically reap what you sow in certain aspects of the movie. And I don't really want to get into the plot or anything like that, but Menace to Society, like even the first scene of the movie is dark. I'm pretty sure there's like a
Yeah.
murder in the first scene. It's really dark, and and it's very interesting how the Hughes brothers uh, did that. I think I want to say like they were too afraid to like when the film premiered in Los Angeles. I think like I don't know if they're like rival gangs showed up or something. There's a whole backstory to it, and I could be completely wrong. I would suggest people to look that up or whatever, because I think both Boys in the Hood and Menace Society have very interesting production and backstory centered around the films, especially because Boys in the Hood was put out by Columbia Pictures,
Uh-huh.
and Columbia Pictures at the time, I think, had just got a new head of production or something like that, new president, and it was, I believe, a female African American woman, and I can't remember her name, and it's driving me crazy. And I tried to look it up before the before the podcast, and I couldn't remember, and she was really trying to change, you know, give people of color more opportunities and whatnot, and so that's very interesting. And I believe like they wanted to get someone else to direct Boys in the Hood, and John Singleton basically said no, you know, I want to direct it and whatnot. The Hughes brothers have also took a lot of inspiration from Martin Scorsese,
Hmm.
because there is literally one shot in Menace to Society that mimics the shot in Goodfellas, the Copacabana shot. It's
Yeah.
just one long shot, but in Menace to Society, I believe it's, you know, into a house party or something like that. And both of these films deal with, I mean, like we said, violence and that urban culture, but they both deal with like, you know, drugs and the effect that that has had on the African American community, especially in the aftermath of the 1980s, where you know there's so many things about drugs in society and whatnot. And it's very interesting how both of those films tackle that. And Juice is a film that I actually haven't seen, and I hate the fact that I haven't
Honestly, I
seen
couldn't
it.
talk about it with any real substance. It's been a while, but I know
I
I've
know
seen
that
it.
I know the film is, you know, yeah. I mean, this is very similar to, you know, grouping it with both Boys in the Hood and Men's Society. You know, four inner city teenagers get caught up in the pursuit of power and happiness, which they refer to as the juice. So yet again, growing up in that world and trying to make your way through it. But I know that this film stars famously Tupac Shakur, who the famous rapper, who you know was killed in the 90s as well. Omar Epps is in the film, who was in he was in the show House, but in he also replaced Wesley Snipes in Major League
Why would
2.
you bring that up? Not a good. It
Because
was
I
not a
know
good. It was not a good
because I
replacement.
know Steven knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That's why.
it's not. It didn't work
Wi-
out.
Willie Mays Hayes, wasn't that his name?
Yeah.
It has the character's name. But this film also has Samuel L. Jackson. Very, very interesting how he keeps popping up. Queen Latifah is also in the film. I definitely have to watch it. Moving on from there, I don't know where you want to go, Steven.
We could talk about Mr. Anton Fuqua.
Oh yes, Antoine Fuqua and his many films that he's done with
Denzel.
Denzel
Yeah.
Washington. It's coincidentally both Spike Lee and Antoine Fuqua have done a lot of films
A lot of
with
films.
Denzel Washington.
And I would say for Anton Fuqua, a lot of his probably his most popular movie is probably Training Day.
Yeah, most definitely.
And, you know, that one starred Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. And it's basically about a dirty cop bringing in this kind of new, you know, young kind of naive cop played by Ethan Hawke. And yeah, I mean, this guy basically thinks he runs the city, and him and his group of cops. And it's a very dark movie. It's a very, you know, it's got a great performance by Denzel. He does end up winning the Academy Award for this role,
He
even
does.
though a lot of people think he should have won before that for, like, I think The Hurricane,
Oh
where he
yeah.
played, probably a couple roles there. Malcolm X, we
Well,
already talked
he
about
had
that.
already won one for Glory, I believe.
Uh, did he win? It was a
Yes.
supporting role. It was a
Yeah, it was a
supporting,
supporting
yeah,
role.
yeah, yeah. But this was his first leading actor role,
His own,
where
yeah,
he
and his
won.
only. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of the breakout. He would go on to do, of course, a lot of other films, um, whether it's the Olympus Has Fallen, which I love.
Interesting you bring that one up.
I know. Well, I could pick any movie with a number of movies with Denzel, I guess, but that would just be boring.
Hey
Um,
now.
he's still a black director just because it ain't a black movie. I mean,
I know.
I could pick any movie from him. I mean, you know, Magnificent Seven. He just recently did the Magnificent
Mm.
Seven remake, which had Denzel in it. And I mean, yeah, I mean, he's pretty consistent. He's done a lot of movies.
Uh, yeah, yes, he has. And it's, one of my underrated films from him, and nobody talks about this movie because people don't really like it, and that is the King Arthur film that he did with, remember, was it
Clive
Clive
Owen,
Owen?
yeah,
Yeah, Clive Owen,
Keira
uh,
Knightley.
Keira Knightley, Mads Mikkelsen's in it, Joel Edgerton, Hugh Dancy, Ray Stevenson, Ray Winstone, Stephen Delane, Stellan Skarsgård. Damn, that's a
I
lot
mean,
of actors that I know.
he's very much, even though he doesn't really do I would say big budget movies. He's kind of like he's just an action movie director. I mean, he just comes in, does these kind of like mid budget like action movies, like Equalizer. He's been doing the Equalizer movies.
Yeah, those are surprisingly good. The first one I think is really good. Second one not so much.
Is okay, yeah.
Is okay, but I think the first one's really cool. I mean, it shows that Denzel's still pretty badass when it
Oh
comes to
yeah,
things like that. And Denzel's never really been an action star per se. He has had action roles, but I wouldn't say like when it comes to the level of violence that he's dishing out in this movie and those Equalizer movies, not quite so. I would say Antoine Fuqua is an underrated director. Um, uh, the Southpaw I thought was a good movie. Even something like I said, King Arthur for me is a kind of a guilty pleasure.
I
I
think
just
his
wanted to mention that.
I think his movies are good general audience movies.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of his movies have a lot of depth, in the sense of themes and stuff. Not necessarily all the time, but he's a good visual director. I think his movies usually look pretty good.
They do look really good. He does have I remember specifically the Magnificent Seven, the way he shot the action and the way the sound design was mixed for the bullets. They sounded like they were hitting like bricks, like they were
Yeah, yeah,
pumping. You know what I mean? It was really, really good. To go with someone, I guess you could say, who does more artistic films. I want to discuss one of my favorites, and that is Steve McQueen. Steve
definitely.
McQueen is the director who's come along in the last 10 years or so. He's only done 4 films since 2008, so probably 4 films over the last 11 years. The Hunger, or just Hunger, Shame, 12 Years a Slave, and recently Widows.
Yeah.
And my favorite amongst those, 12 Years a Slave, is
I don't know.
a movie that's on another level to me. But go on.
I love that movie, but I think I would probably go Shame. I think
Shame is like those two are just so powerful. Like I think like those are the types of films that you just think about and you're just like, wow.
It's hard
I
to go
can't
back and
believe-
watch them movies. They're
Yeah,
just
they
so
are very
devastating.
devastatingly powerful films. Both of those films are existential journeys through like living nightmares to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Shame is more internalized, dealing with, sex addiction literally and how internally it affects you and kind of how it affects you, in your life and the
Yeah.
physical world you live in. And 12 Years a Slave, obviously, dealing with slavery and its catastrophic mental and physical toll it took upon people and whatnot. Both films exquisitely well acted by both Michael Fassbender and Chiwetel Ejiofor. Specifically in 12 Years a Slave, what really got me is the dialogue is so rich and so layered and so Shakespearean-esque
Yeah.
that it's very, very powerful and almost heightens the experience, or heightens it in the sense like, wow, this is amazing. Not heightens it and then like makes it better because slavery is terrible.
And I think there's also a little bit of, with Steve McQueen, I'm not there. If I'm mistaken, I don't know. Anton Fuqua might also be, he's English too, I think, isn't he? Or is he American?
Let me look.
Because I was going to say there, there is a little bit of a difference here too, because, Steve McQueen is English. And so his upbringing might have been a little bit different, and if you look at his filmography so far, other than 12 Years a Slave, he doesn't necessarily kind of play into, African-American culture or Black culture. It's more just kind of movies about things he's interested in, like just things that could be more universal.
Right. I'll say this. Antoine Fuqua was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure.
And Steve McQueen, let me look up. I'm pretty sure he is from Great Britain or that area, because the accent. But you don't really. Yeah, he was born in London.
Yeah. So his you can tell how, even though he's a Black director, he doesn't necessarily have the influences like a lot of African American directors. He's I think he definitely has a especially with 12 Years a Slave has a clear, because even though we look at a lot of the struggles of African American culture just being in America. It's happens everywhere. You know,
Right.
hate, black hate is everywhere in the world, not just in America. So it's, but his, but even with that, he obviously has a different perspective in his upbringing, and it
Right.
hasn't necessarily, I think, fell into just doing movies like that. Because he did Hunger also, which is about like a prison hunger strike, which is something very different. And then, of course, we
Right.
talked about Shame with sex addiction, 12 Years a Slave, and then he recently did Widows, which was a heist film. But that definitely had a lot of social political commentary
Oh, most definitely.
about kind of society and how the rich and the poor, the class structure and stuff like
Yes,
that. So yeah, he definitely got more political with that movie, but
most
I
definitely.
think he's a very open director. I think he's willing to talk about almost anything.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen his interviews, and the way he discusses film is just really fascinating. Like genius, you can tell you're listening to someone who has like genius level intellect,
Oh
just the
yeah,
way in which they approach things. I remember like I became a little bit obsessed with him when 12 Years a Slave came out, and I wanted to see, I wanted to see Shame, I wanted to see Hunger, but I also wanted to see, what's his thought process like? Like,
yeah,
how does he, approach film and stuff like that? And that stuff fascinates the heck out of me because you begin to see how that translates onto the screen. Like,
yeah.
a lot of these people's, the way they think and the way they structure their films is very, very important. And Steve McQueen, I think, is just fascinating. That's why I really liked Whittles a lot. I know a lot of people didn't kind of attach themselves to Widows too much because I think they thought it was just going to be a heist film, a la maybe a Heat or something like that. But there's really so much more going on in that movie than just
Oh yeah,
that
definitely.
moment. That moment literally doesn't happen until the third act of the
It,
film. You know what I
it's
mean?
what's
It's
tough,
not
man.
the film's not based on that.
It's what's tough about trying to, when Steve McQueen stayed pretty independent, but with this
Yes,
movie he decided to go with a bigger cast. So he needed more money, which means he kind of went into the mainstream, which means they want to sell the movie to try to make money.
right.
And when they do that, they can kind of misinterpret the movie to the audience. And I think that the audience probably thought this was more of a heist movie.
It
They
wouldn't
don't
be
know that it's
the
made
first
by
time.
Steve McQueen, a guy that's an art house filmmaker.
Yeah, he's an auteur.
Yeah.
I also really love his visual style in his films.
Yeah.
I think
He's
there's
willing to do
something
these very long takes.
very long takes, stunning cinematography that is featured in his films. For those of you not aware, 12 Years a Slave did win Best Picture the year it came out.
Well,
It
I
also
think that
won
the
a bunch
thing
of
that
awards.
oh yeah, I think that
Yeah.
the thing that he's I think from what I can tell the best at is directing actors,
Yeah.
because like almost everything he's done, there's people get nominated for something.
I
Um,
Some of the best performances I've seen from Michael Fassbender are from his
oh yeah, his
Steve
work
McQueen's
with
films.
him, yeah,
12 Years
and
a Slave, man, he is pure evil in
well, the
that
thing
movie.
is when you allow when you do these long takes, you're allowing your actors to basically just act their asses off. I mean, like it's
Yeah.
like going back to being on Broadway or something where you're just you're acting to the crowd. He's just going to sit there on you and let you do your thing. And so
Yeah,
as an actor, they have to step up their game, and they usually do. I
yeah,
mean,
you give them a little more, you give them a little more to work with. You give them a
you're
little
letting them
less
stay in
structure.
character longer instead of stopping them and starting them.
Right.
And
You're
it's
able to letting
it's
them kind of
effective.
and when you have the talent that he has in his movies, you can get away with that. Sometimes there are actors who probably can't, who need that structure, who
Yeah.
need to know, where their marks are, where to start and stop and all that kind of stuff. And some need it, some can kind of improv or just keep going when they need to keep going, or however it's structured, however they rehearse it or whatnot. But yeah, Steve McQueen is one of my favorites, and I can't wait to see what else he does. I don't know if he's going to go back to the the indie realm or if he's going to stay more kind of mid-budget, mainstream. Either way, I'll be there watching.
I hope I would assume he's going to go do another movie with Michael Fassbender again.
But could be very
It,
well.
it's probably what's going to happen. But all right, well, let's get this one out of the way because he really only has one movie, and we
Oh,
can talk about it real quick
okay.
because he's a very new director. Rick Famuyiwa,
Oh,
who did Dope a couple years
he
ago,
did do Dope.
and it was one of my
Great
favorite movies
movie.
of the year it came out. Find out where he's from for me, because I think he's definitely from another country.
Oh, not necessarily. Let's
I
see.
think he is though, because I've heard him. I think he has an accent. I think he's from another country. But Dope, he did Dope a couple years ago, which is kind of this coming of age story.
Rick. He grew up.
Famuyiwa.
He grew up in near Los Angeles.
Well, see, I'm just wrong.
Yeah, in Inglewood, which is
Okay.
right down the
Yeah.
street from
Well,
like
yeah.
the
I mean,
Staples
so the
Center.
movie takes place, I think, in that
In that
area.
area,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's a great coming of age movie, and where you got this kid who's kind of, the culture, black culture, is very much, in a lot of these films, and in reality, black culture sticks together, and they all kind of like celebrate the same things. And this kid kind of celebrates old school mentality. He loves like 80s or 90s music, and it's like modern day, and he's kind of making himself an outlier, instead of trying to fit in. And so even though he's still trying to fit in. So it's kind of like an identity movie, the movie where he's trying to find his place, trying to be the good guy around a lot of bad people.
Yeah, he is, and he has a group of, well, I think believe be a group of friends or two other friends, and they're both kind of like-minded as he is. The film, I mean, we should say the actor's name. And once again, IMDb is failing me.
You're fairly
Shocker
off.
here. Of course, they wouldn't give like top billing to the main actor. Of course they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't. But keep talking, because this is
Oh, well, I
gonna drive
mean,
me
yeah,
crazy.
I mean, all I could say is just I think that I don't think this was his debut. He might have done some other stuff before this, but it's a fantastic movie. It's one I've actually went back to watch many times, and it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah,
I feel
it's
like,
fantastic. And talk about a movie with social commentary. There's a monologue towards the end of this movie where I believe he's writing his college essay or something like that, and just the way in which he's expressing himself in relation to the way in which the world views young African American kids, teenagers specifically, is just extremely powerful. You can look up the clip on YouTube; it's absolutely fantastic. Um, and Kirstie Clement is also in the film. The young actor is Shamik Moore, I believe he is the actor.
he's very good in this movie.
He's very good in this movie. He recently did the voice of Miles Morales in the animated Spider-Man film,
Oh yeah,
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And for some reason, if you go to the Dope IMDb page, like, he's not the first one credited.
what,
Because sometimes IMDb, the way they do it is it's the cast overview, but it's first build only.
dude?
And he's
Whoever,
not.
if somebody can edit that page, go and edit that shit.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he's not even like, you have to click the full cast list just to get to him.
dumb.
It's really, really annoying. Also, Zoe Kravitz is in the film.
Yeah,
There he is. Yeah, I found him. Shamik Moore. Lakeith Stanfield's actually in the movie as well. Lakeith Stanfield, who is really making a name for himself now as well. Coincidentally, in a film this year, with directed by a black director. Sorry to Bother You. Talk about a film.
Boots Riley. Yeah.
Boots Riley is the director. Talk about a film with just mounds of social commentary about
Oh yeah,
racism
you
and
can go
class
back to our
structure.
favorites of the year episode. We talk about Sorry to Bother You a little bit there.
We talk
Yeah,
about
it's
Sorry to Bother You. I
such
recently
a unique
rewatched
film,
it.
such a singular, obviously a unique singular vision there, and I can't wait to see what he does next. It's yeah.
So moving on from Dope, which is a dope movie that everybody should
Dope.
watch. Where do I want to go?
I mean, we could go ahead and we could bring up this guy right here
I
who's
got a
very
big one.
prominent.
Yeah,
You got one?
I was gonna go Ryan Coogler.
We can
Was
go.
that-
Hey, go
was that
Ryan
what you were
Coogler,
gonna
man. That's a good.
Yeah,
one.
let me gush about Ryan Coogler for a few minutes here. Man, my favorite film from him is really tough to pick. It's
It
really
is
tough to
tough.
pick.
He's definitely like he's been able to go like each
Damn.
level. He's gradually been able to up his game every
Yeah,
movie.
it's like just like upgrading, like
Literally
like
from
in
the
a video
bottom
game.
with Fruitvale Station to the top where he gets to Black Panther. And in
Yeah,
between he does,
Creed.
a Creed movie, which is very, awesome and brings back the Rocky franchise.
Yeah, part of me, you know how much I love Creed.
Yeah.
But I think I gushed about it so much in the episode we did about the Rocky franchise
Yeah.
that I don't want to just
Yeah. We
repeat
don't need to
myself.
regurgitate that,
I
but
don't need to regurgitate. Just know that
I
I
would say
think Creed is
Fruitvale
amazing.
Station's
Fruitvale Station
let's
is
go
where
with
he
that.
got his
Yeah.
name. Fruitvale Station is a fantastic film starring Michael B. Jordan, based on a real life story.
Kind of his muse.
Yeah, very
Michael
much
B.
so.
Jordan. He's in all his movies so far.
Yeah, the film is about a person named Oscar Grant. He was a 22-year-old Bay Area, guy person. He and his friends are out one night, and he accidentally gets shot by a cop, and he dies. Not spoiler alert. I mean, it was in the news and all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff. There was
it's
a whole
yeah.
big thing about it. It's not a big spoiler. I knew that going into the movie that this happened, and the film is just chronicling kind of like the last day or two of his life, and it's just to him, you know, visiting his girlfriend, doing things with visiting his family, friends, and all that kind of stuff, and just chronicling the last moments of his life. And it's an extremely powerful film, especially the ending. His mom, I believe, or the mother character in the film is portrayed by Octavia Spencer, and it's just there's a moment at the end of the film where she just has to his he's dead, and she just has to say goodbye to him. It's really emotionally powerful, and
And
the
what's
rain.
interesting
Yeah, go
is
on.
that this movie, now, especially this past year, we've had tons of movies that deal with the similar subject.
Mm.
And this movie came 4 or 5 years before this. This kind of sudden, big boost in these movies about white police officers killing young black people.
Yeah, this came out in 2013.
Yeah, so it's 5 years ahead of its time in the sense of like, I mean, sure, there's been movies about white police officers, and stuff, going against, killing black people, but it's suddenly become a big thing in the news and in film, most recently over the last couple of years. But this movie did it 3 or 4 years, 5 years
And
earlier.
what is interesting now is the people are more socially aware of things like that happening. And I remember when this happened. Like I remember
Yeah,
hearing about it in the news, and what happened was the officer that did it, apparently he thought he had his the stun gun, but apparently
yeah.
he pulled his gun by accident, and he ended up shooting him, and that's how he died. And it's a really powerful story. I can't recommend it enough. And the way in which Coogler does his films, specifically both Creed and Fruitvale Station, is they have this emotional resonance throughout. Like they feel real and sincere. Like these people have a sense of reality to them. Like you're watching a movie. You're aware you're watching a movie, but you can view these characters as real people. In Fruitvale Station, it was a real person. Adonis Creed, and Creed is a
Yeah.
fictional character, but they feel very real. You know what I mean? And he's just kind of graduated up even further to doing a literally gigantic mainstream film in Black Panther, and he's able to bring a lot of his sensibilities into that film as well, where if you just watch some videos on YouTube of him breaking down certain scenes in Black Panther, and you can see that once again we're dealing with someone who is on a genius type level, where like everything in the scene is so meticulously well detailed, not only from just the movements of the characters, but to the very clothes they're wearing is all purposely done. He is, I think, an absolute genius. What is very interesting, I came to find this out recently, kind of a bit of a trivia, is the editor who is the editor on all of his films is actually is from a local town near me. Like
Oh,
his
really?
Yeah, my one of my friends who works at one of the local libraries, the dad of the editor came in there looking for comic books on Black Panther because he's like, my son is editing the Black Panther movie, and I want to, read up on these comics. And I was like, wow, what a completely small world. That would happen. Like apparently he was from here. He went to USC, met Ryan Coogler, and they become friends ever since.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, wow. And what is interesting is I was talking to a friend who I went to high school with who knows him um from when he lived here. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that's an even smaller world. That's just
Yeah, I know, right?
that's just a cool thing. Nothing that interesting ever happens to me. So I thought I would share
Yeah,
that.
make sure you brag about that in the
Oh,
episode.
make
Yeah.
sure I brag about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. But I
Yeah.
think it's also interesting to say that, I think there's a clear difference, and this goes for any director really, but you can tell which of these directors are also writers also.
Right.
The more detailed somebody like a Coogler are ones that usually also write the films.
Yeah, if you're interested, he wrote Fruitvale Station, Creed, and Black Panther.
Yeah.
He was a producer on Creed too. He didn't direct it, but I know he was involved in there somehow.
Yeah, I just think that really I think a lot of what you're talking about with the sincerity of his movies plays into how he writes his characters.
Yeah, he's very socially aware of
Yeah.
the plight of the African American community and just kind of the Black community in general. Just watch Black Panther.
Yeah, he also uses
Killmonger and his philosophy about the world and what he wants to do in that movie. Very political. Very political.
He also is very much like when we talked about M. Night Shyamalan. He uses the same location a lot. He uses Oakland.
Yes, because he's
in his
from
movies.
there.
Yeah.
He understands probably that place better than any place else.
Yeah. But going to another recent director, I think that's become very popular is Jordan Peele.
Oh,
Which I think, if I'm not mistaken, he might actually be mixed, but I think he has a white mother, but I think most people count him as a Black director.
Yeah. I mean,
but yes, Jordan Peele, he just recently last year came out with his debut, which was Get Out, which is very popular, nominated for Best Picture. He ended up winning Best Writing original credit. And now he's got his new film coming out called Us, which I'm very excited for. And
dealing with doppelgangers. And
Doppelganger, it looks awesome.
Like that. It's another film that looks steeped in social commentary about.
Yeah, it seems to be his thing. He very much has a lot to say, and the way he does it, I love, because he likes to use. He's using horror films. He's using thrillers to tell these social, because a lot of the things that he's trying to talk about are horrifying to people, but he's finding a way to put that in a way that's accessible for people.
And I find that the more I've watched Get Out, the more I've unpacked it, the more
genius
it is.
Yeah,
and I can see why that screenplay was given an Oscar, because of how layered it is, and what he's saying in that film is so interesting and fascinating on a social level. That film is like it's a kind of a not live action, but kind of a feature length Twilight Zone episode that also functions as a social commentary about race relations as well. Jordan Peele is really fantastic. What is interesting is
he's a creative force, man.
Yeah, what is interesting is I always come across Key and Peele sketches on social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and I'm like, man, Jordan Peele, he's out here directing these movies that are they make you think, and they probably also going to frighten you as well. But he was also doing this very funny, very well liked sketch comedy show on Comedy Central for several years as well.
Yeah,
it just shows his diversity in terms of his acumen as an artist.
Yeah, he's able to filter all that really deep social commentary, political commentary through a filter that's unique to him. Like he has a certain vision that I don't think a lot of people have. He's able to turn that stuff into, that deep subject matter into something that people can take in and understand, but also be very smart and unique. And he like I said, creative force. He's also going to be hosting the new Twilight Zone reboot.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really sure he's going to have creative input in that also.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And also recently produced Spike Lee's Black Klansman.
Oh,
So
yes, he did.
so yeah, he's been involved, and he's very much involved in bringing African American directors into the fold and working with other African American, people to further other people's careers.
Right. And
So that's great. That's a great thing.
it is fantastic. Like I said, there's a resurgence right now, a renaissance of all of these all of these black directors and
I saw
whatnot making great work.
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw an article where Spike Lee said that he hopes that this isn't just a blip,
right.
that this is actually like actual momentum here that's going to move forward forever, which is, yeah, I hope so too. Cause I mean, you're missing out on a lot of great stuff if you just start marginalizing certain people, and it's how we are with Cinema Discovery Project in general. We want to talk about things that are kind of marginalized. That's kind of the things we like to talk about.
Illuminate certain things that light is not always, put upon.
Yeah.
Light is not always shed on. But the next one I want to talk about, and kind of a big one, at least for me, and another modern director, is Barry Jenkins.
Good one. Yeah.
Barry Jenkins, his last two films are like gorgeous, breathtakingly gorgeous. Of course, Moonlight, which came out a few years ago, is the film that won best picture in, despite that snafu at the Oscars.
Yeah.
It came out in 2016, and the film was uniquely told in a three-act structure of the youth, teenage, and adulthood of this African American kid who was gay, and it was all about him wrestling not only with that, but wrestling with the society around him and just trying to live. He had a drug addicted mother portrayed by Naomi Harris, who was fantastic. Mahershala Ali was also in the film as well, who was kind of this mentor figure. Janelle Monáe was in the film as well, and there are just several talented actors who portrayed this character. I believe the adult one was Trevante Rhodes, was the adult version of this character of what's his name? Sharon?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
once again, IMDb fails me.
And I have to say, I mean, I know people got all upset about that La La Land situation, but I think Moonlight was the right choice.
Moonlight was the better movie.
It's the better movie, and it's also it's the movie that actually has. I tell people this all the time. Is like when sometimes these small movies or these movies you never heard of win Best Picture. I'm like, well, I mean, the movie had something to say.
Right.
When a movie has something to say and it's relevant to the time it was in, that's the movies I like to see win Best Picture, because that's the ones that can help pinpoint a moment in time that was important. And that movie very, very much encapsulates this moment in time, a certain aspect of this moment in time that needs to be remembered. And one way to do that is to award it Best Picture of the Year. I mean, it's always going to be there now. It's of course always going to be remembered for being linked with La La Land now, with that particular situation. So it's a movie that I very much remember seeing in the theater and just being blown away by how authentic it is and gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous. I mean, I have some little issues with the cinematography, but other than that, it's just so. It's such a very just almost tunnel vision, personal. You're with the character. It's not documentary style, but you're with the character. Like you feel like you're with him the whole movie.
Yeah, the other actors that portray the character of Sharon was Ashton Sanders and Alex R. Hibbert. But the thing is, the way I was to look it up on IMDb, he didn't have, like, in the first act, I believe he's referred to as Little. The second act, he's referred to as Sharon, and I think the third act he's just referred to as Black. Very interesting the way the character is depicted in the film. And yeah, like Steven said, the cinematography in the movie was very close knitted. Lots of close ups and a lot of moments where the character that we follow throughout the film is just taking up the whole frame.
Yeah.
And I always pointed that out because it was very indicative of how the character felt being boxed in literally by the world in which he was living in, and how he was just being stifled within, within himself. And it was really just an amazing layered film. I think Barry Jenkins is an amazing director, and his follow-up film, which If Beale Street Could Talk, gorgeously stunning film,
Mm-hmm.
just beautiful in its themes and its approach to what it was saying. And the directing is off the charts. How that movie, I'll say this again, how that movie wasn't nominated for Best Picture
It's
baffles my
it's
mind.
it's
I brought
crazy.
this up when we talked about the Oscar noms a few weeks ago, but it's a better movie than most of the films that got nominated for an Oscar for
It's
Best
at least
Picture.
it's better than at least half the movies.
At least three or four, with
Yeah,
four
yeah.
being half. But man, he is an incredible director with a lot to say in his films, and he's able to say it. He's definitely an auteur. He's also very active on social media. I follow him on Twitter, and his tweets are really good.
Now
And
I'm going to
go on,
change the pace a little bit here.
change it.
Okay. Now we've talked basically about a lot of directors. I would say we love and respect their movies a lot. This director, I would say, is a little bit controversial, but he's definitely somebody we can't not talk about, and that is Tyler Perry.
Nice.
Yeah, Tyler Perry is a very popular director with I would say, the general audience, African American audience, and of course everybody. I mean, everybody. I mean, his movies are very successful.
They are.
He is a figure that about everybody knows because of his Medea character. That he's went on to do many movies for. I think maybe 5 or 6 movies for Medea, I think. And yeah, but I mean, he's kind of, I would say, probably the most mainstream African American figure there is, that at least that I can think of. I mean, what do you think?
I would say he's very well known, if that's what you kind of mean,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like,
because of his Medea character. Yeah,
I mean, like, when it comes to African American directors, he's kind of the most popular. I mean, in the sense of,
like in terms of like box office?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Oh,
people see
okay.
his movies. I'm not
They do.
saying that film lovers think he's the best African American director. I'm saying his movies get seen the
They
most.
do.
I mean, they really do. I mean, by everybody. Now, personally, I don't look at his movies as being much of much merit to me personally. I mean, they're very much. I find them. I kind of find them. To be a little bit stereotypical. I would be offended if I was black, maybe, by these movies, but I'm not. But people seem to enjoy them. They're very much, popcorn movies.
Yeah, and he's one of those directors who's also an actor as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a few of them. Denzel Washington is one of those as well.
He's directed a couple
He's
movies.
directed
Yeah.
a couple movies. His most recent film, Fences, is really fantastic. He also directed, I believe, Antoine Fisher and The Great
The
Debaters.
Great Debaters. Yeah.
That's him. Forrest Whitaker is also, I believe, delved into directing, but he's also produced a lot. I'm just gonna look up
We also have
one.
Lee Daniels.
Yes, Lee Daniels, who did
Precious.
Precious,
And The
Precious,
Butler.
yeah, and Lee Daniels, the butler. He always liked, for some reason, to put his name in the
Yeah, I
title
was
of
gonna
the
say,
movies.
like,
I don't know
why
why.
does he? I don't know.
I don't know.
M. Night
Yeah.
Shyamalan does it.
That I guess he does. Not really, but it's like
Not really, but
no,
he
it's
did
not
it
like
first.
it's
He
not
did
like
it first.
yeah, it's not like M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense or M. Night
Well,
Shyamalan's
he
The
kind of
Villain.
did at first, but then when people started to hate his movies, he took his name off there.
Yeah, I'm just getting back to Forrest Whitaker did the film Waiting to Exhale. He also directed the movie First Daughter, if anybody cares about that, with Katie Holmes. Katie Holmes and Michael Keaton
I was gonna
plays
say,
like
I
the
don't think
father.
I've seen any Forrest Whitaker movies. I haven't seen anything he's directed.
He also directed Hope Floats with
You know what? I might have seen that one.
Sandra Bullock and Harry Connick Jr.,
Huh.
Gina Rollins. Um,
Interesting.
Interesting. I'm just pointing out that
Yeah, 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 yeah.
there are other, you know,
Definitely.
actor directors who are also writers and producers and stuff like that. But yeah, Lee Daniels, um, I liked The Butler.
Yeah, I
Did I
like
think
The
it was a
Butler.
perfect film? No, but I really liked it, and I liked Forest Whitaker in it. I thought he was really fantastic. I think Forest Whitaker is a great actor in general, but Lee Daniels doesn't have a very large filmography. He's got a film called Shadow Boxer. He's got Precious, which everybody remembers. The Paperboy. I don't know if you've seen The Paperboy, Stephen,
No,
but
I
that's
haven't
a
seen it, but
weird movie. Some people hate it, some people love it. The film stars Zac Efron, Matthew McConaughey, Nicole Kidman, John Cusack's in the movie. David Oyelowo was in the movie. I couldn't even tell you the plot of this movie. It's so weird. You just kind of have to watch it yourself.
all right.
I don't even know if I own it. I may own it, probably not. But he's more known, I think, for producing two very successful television series in Empire and Star.
Okay.
That's Lee Daniels.
There's also more recent filmmaker Dee Rees,
Yes,
who
Dee
recently
Reese
did
is fantastic.
Mudbound.
Thank you for bringing up Dee Reese because I almost forgot because the other night I watched her 2011 film Pariah, which is really fantastic, very independent, a very raw film. And it's dealing with a young African American girl who is also gay, but she's trying to hide it from her parents and
Yeah.
she really doesn't know how to, deal with that in her life and just kind of going through, growing pains literally. And the film is just fantastic. It's really, really raw and real and has a lot to say about, you know, similar to Moonlight, this idea of being gay, not only in a society that shuns you, if you will. There's a lot of terrible people who don't like homosexual people, LGBTQ, they hate all of them. But not only that, but also being that within the African American society as well, that adds an extra layer to it. And of course, being a woman, that adds another
Yeah.
extra layer to it. So it's a very deeply layered film. That's really, really good. But Dee Reese, as you mentioned, one of her more recent films, um, Mud, um,
Mudbound.
Rose- Mudbound, fantastic film. I thought it was really great, amazing cinematography.
Yeah, some great performances too. You had that Garrett Hedlund's in that. We talked.
There he is. I knew
There
he
he
was
is. He's in that
somewhere.
movie. It's got.
Carrie Mulligan, who I love Carrie Mulligan.
I love her when she's in movies, but she's just not. She's like she's in Drive, and then she was in like.
Oh, she's in movies. She's
She
in
is, but
movies.
it's like they're few and far between. She's like so
Uh,
independent. She was in that wildlife movie this past year.
did you not like her in the uh the movie they did, the Great Gatsby a few years
Oh
ago when
God,
she
I'd
was in
hate that
that?
movie.
See, you hate that movie, and
I
and
hate
I'm the
that
only one who
movie.
likes it. I'm the only one who likes it.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, because it's not.
Because I know how weird Baz Luhrmann is. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just get weird.
Well, see, the
And the
thing
movie
is
is
I
weird.
I like Australia, and nobody likes that movie.
Yeah, you may be the only one,
I
but
might be the only one that liked
coincidentally,
Australia.
coincidentally, she was in Shame, a film we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
plays the
yeah,
sister in that film. Very interesting relationship
yeah.
with Michael Fassbender's character in that film. A lot of things going on there. But that's Shame. She, of course, she was in Drive, like you said. She's in Inside Llewyn Davis. She's in that movie, Suffragette. She was in that movie. What was it? Far from the Maddening Crowd? Yes, Far from the Madding Crowd. She shows up. I think she's a great actress.
Oh yeah,
I
she's
really love
awesome.
her. She was nominated for an Oscar early in her career, I think, for An Education, which I think is a really good film. She's also in the movie Never Let Me Go. Super depressing movie. Man, if you really want to just drive yourself down to depression lane, watch that movie. But what were we just talking about?
Dee
Oh yeah.
Reese.
Oh, Dee Reese and Mudbound. The film stars Jason Clarke is in it as well. Jason Mitchell, Mary J. Blige is in it. She's really
I think
fantastic.
she got nominated, didn't she?
Let's see. The movie was nominated for 4 Oscars. Uh,
Cinematography.
Mary J. Blige for supporting role. Best adapted screenplay. It is based
I
on
think
a
it got a
book.
song nomination too, didn't it?
It did get a Best Original Song nomination.
Yeah, Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, for Mighty River. Mary J. Blige, she did write it, yeah. And then Best Cinematography, which you may have mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I really
And,
like
and,
Deep
and
Reese.
also, it was a Netflix movie, so
It was a Netflix movie.
so
Tell
that
you,
was a
Netflix
big deal.
Netflix is an interesting ground for people who haven't been able to have the same opportunity in, you know, the regular studio system that we've got running around now. Netflix is kind of like getting them like, oh, come over here. We'll
Yeah,
make your
yeah.
whatever movie you want to make. We'll give you the money. Come over here. Oh, like you're Martin Scorsese and the studios for some reason won't give you money for your movies because they're crazy. Come over here, you know?
Apparently, Netflix has something going on where they're making money and they're able to throw shit at everybody. Like they're just Oprah. Just here, you get a movie and you get a
Get a
movie. Like,
movie.
and apparently there's no repercussions. So they just keep giving out movies to people. So
They
I mean,
do.
hey, why don't you give me a movie? I'll take a movie. Uh, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Well, yeah, yeah. Dee Reese is someone whose filmography I'm just diving into now. Like I mentioned, Pariah is really fantastic, but it's a raw film. She also did the TV movie Bessie, starring Queen Latifah, that got a lot of critical praise a few years ago. At least it got a Golden Globe nomination. And of course, Mudbound is probably her most notable film so far. And I really want to see what she's doing next. I think she has a film coming out this year called The Last Thing He Wanted. It says it's in post production, and it still does have a 2019 release date. So I'm very curious about this movie. Wow, it's let me see. A journalist quits her newspaper job and becomes an arms dealer for a covert government agency. And
Okay.
look at this cast: Anne Hathaway, Ben Affleck, Willem Dafoe, Rosie Perez, Toby Jones.
Damn.
Yeah, that's an interesting cast there.
But I mean, there's
I'll watch it.
there's a lot of directors, a lot of African American directors, black directors that we could keep talking about. I mean, and there's some that I haven't seen their movies, but I know that they're prominent directors of their time. Um, there's uh, there's I got a couple names here. Carl Franklin
Yeah,
did Devil in a Blue Dress, which
Devil in a
had
Blue Dress
Denzel in
is
it.
great.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think is his name, Robert Townsend.
Yeah, Robert Townsend is actually he was I believe he's an actor, director, writer, but also a
Yeah.
comedian as well. And he did several movies. I remember seeing him on a sitcom in the 90s. I can't even remember what the name of the sitcom was. And but he was also in what's that movie? I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, Robert Townsend. If you see him, you know the Meteor Man. I don't know if
Yeah,
anyone remembers
Meteor
the
Man,
Meteor
yeah.
Man. Yeah, the sitcom he was in the 90s was called The Parenthood, and I remember he was the dad in that show. But he's directed quite a few things, and yet again, it's stuff that I really need to get into. Um, yeah, there's one specifically, Hollywood Shuffle. I keep seeing coming up when I was doing my
Yeah.
research for the show.
Cool. Well, anybody else you want to cover, or do you think
Oh
this is
man,
good? I mean, like we said, we're definitely going to come back to this subject matter again, and try to hit into a lot of the earlier stuff.
yeah.
But
I
we
think
really wanted to just kind of give an overview of some black filmmakers that we thought were, some of them up and comers, and some of them are still doing their thing, and hopefully just get more and more opportunities moving forward to show us what they got, man. I mean, I'm
Another one,
excited.
there's another one I want to bring up,
Okay.
and I mean, people who made just this is just a personal one for me. Um, Richard Ayoade. I don't know if people know who Richard Ayoade, and he was in the IT Crowd. He was in that movie where um, what's his name? Jonah Hill was in it. Where they're Neighborhood Watch. I think it's just called The Watch.
Yeah, The
Remember?
Watch. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to change the name of that movie because after what happened in Florida
Yeah.
with Trayvon Martin, they were like, 'Cause
Oh
the
man.
guy was part of the he said he was part of the Neighborhood
Yeah,
Watch.
where the aliens take over and it's Ben
Yeah,
Stiller and
something like
yeah,
that. Yeah, it's like
not
any
a
but
good
he's
movie.
in that Richard Ayoade is in that movie, and he directed 2 films that are, I think, really, really great, and they're weird films, but you know me, I love my weird films. He directed this movie called Submarine, which is like a Wes Anderson coming of age movie, but, but with his kind of, you know, personality in it, and he also directed a film called, The Double, with Jesse Eisenberg.
And that I didn't love that
I
movie.
like that movie. I it
Yeah,
was
I
a
didn't.
weird version of a Terry Gilliam film. It felt a lot like Brazil at times. That's why I really liked it. I personally like those 2 movies. That's
I
just
think
me.
part of it is I think Jesse Eisenberg just isn't good.
Well, he's
He's
been
only been
playing the
good
same
one
guy.
time, and that was Social Network, and that's because he's playing himself.
Well, he keeps playing the same character over and over again. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or the same sensibilities, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
A lot of actors
he
get
has the
stuck.
same character. He has the same like mannerisms and things in every movie he does. Like he can't. It's like he can't channel himself into anything else other than the awkward, fidgety, white dude. I mean, I don't. I mean,
Yeah, you're not wrong, but honestly, if they keep paying you to do it,
oh
you
yeah,
keep doing
go
it.
for it, buddy. Look.
I'm
You're
doing it.
living better. You're living higher than I am.
Yeah,
So
I'll do it.
go for
Yeah.
it.
But, yeah, that was one I wanted to mention. I was actually thinking of Richard Ayoade the other day because I was like, I was hoping that he would come out with another movie because he's a big fan of Eric Rohmer,
Uh-huh.
and I know, Steven, you like Eric
Oh
Rohmer,
yeah,
and
definitely.
his film Submarine is like a Wes Anderson coming of age movie, like, filtered through the prism of Eric Rohmer, and
Okay.
so
I have to check
it's
that out.
very, very interesting. I really, really dug it.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to stop here, and like we said, we'll come back around to this subject again, and of course elaborate more on some other
Yes.
Black filmmakers, and probably the next time go deeper into this, the beginnings of the silent era, and talk about that time period.
Yeah, and I think we'll open it up when we talk about Black cinema in general. I think we'll open it up to perhaps, films that were not necessarily directed by Black filmmakers, but were films that, are about, African American society and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Because doing my research, I kept, looking up, when you Google search some of these, you get films like, "Oh, yeah, I know that film," but you keep coming up on all these films that are good films, but they're directed by, non-Black people. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you're like, "Oh, that's not really what I'm looking for." So
yeah.
when we dive into that, I would definitely wanna just kind of, go full tilt and just broad spectrum everything, especially the early stuff. We do wanna mention there is a Kino Blu-ray box set that has a lot of those early, um, African American, cinema films in there that, they all were restored and whatnot because, they are rather old.
Yeah.
Some of them are from the silent era, some of them are from the slightly early talkie era, but they're very unique, and I would definitely highly recommend people delving into all aspects of cinema, but
Definitely. Of
definitely
course, that's
African
what we're all
American
about
ones
here.
as well.
Definitely what we're all about here. But that's going to be it for this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can also find me showing you all the movies I buy and some other hijinks on Cinema Discovery Project Instagram. You can also find the audio for this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Podbean, all of them places. And that will be it for this episode. Please let us know what you think. Watch some past episodes. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.